Welcome to Relationship Workout for Men, a podcast dedicated to helping men be intentional in choosing a better partner and being a better partner to the person they choose. Note, each season was recorded to be listened to in episode order, starting with episode 1. So if you're new to this podcast, we recommended you start with episode 1 for any of the currently published seasons. And please follow the podcast to be notified when the next season publishes.
Welcome to Unlocking the Inner Platoon with Dr. Rivka Edery. Today's session is entitled, How Psychological Flexibility with Inner Parts Work Can Help Veterans with PTSD. Dr. Edery, would you please introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Sure thing. I'm so happy to be here today. My name is Dr. Rivka Edery. I am a doctor of clinical and applied psychology and licensed clinical social worker with multiple certifications in mental health. And I published a book, Trauma and Transformation, a 12-step guide in 2013. And that is a book on recovering from trauma based on the 12 steps of AA. So it's clinical, it's spiritual, it blends the two, it's holistic, and it's also timeless and classic. So it's another approach to healing from trauma, is really the taking accountability with spirituality. My professional background is I've been working with military, active duty, and their dependents for almost a decade. And so post-traumatic stress, injury issues that are unique to active duty is very close to my heart. I've it's my way of giving back to my country is by serving the military in this way. It's no secret that the spouses and the dependents are fighting on their own war front. They're in their own battles. So thank you to your service as well. And what I'm here to talk about today is a topic that is something I'm very passionate about, which is how psychological flexibility with inner parts work can help veterans with PTSD. So I'm excited to bring this topic to you today. It is something that I've been researching, applying, and being in love with the past 2 to 3 years, and it continues to have a notable effect with my active duty clients.
Thank you, Dr. Edery. Today's webinar will be structured around 2 questions wives of servicemen have submitted for Dr. Edery's insights around this topic. Our first question, how can wives of servicemen help their husbands in practicing psychological flexibility at home?
Sure, of course. So supporting your husband in practicing psychological flexibility at home can be incredibly beneficial for both his well-being and your relationship. Here are some ways you can help. Number 1, educate yourself. Learn about psychological flexibility. Understand the core concepts of accepting thoughts and feelings, being present, clarifying values, and taking committed action. This will help you empathize with your husband's struggles in addition to supporting his efforts. Research resources. Look for books, articles, or online courses on psychological flexibility. Share these resources with your husband or explore them together. And you can do a simple Google search of ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, and you will find a plethora of resources available. So number 2 is create a supportive environment. What does that mean? Four helpful ways to create a supportive environment. 1, open communication. Foster an environment where your husband feels safe to share his thoughts, feelings, and challenges without judgment. We all know that inner critic can be very painful and very active, especially with those with PTSD. So if we can foster an environment where there's safety to express thoughts and feelings, That allows for open communication. 2, validate his experiences. Let him know that it's okay to feel whatever he's feeling and that you're there to listen and support him. 3, practice active listening. Pay attention to what he says, reflect on what you hear, and ask clarifying questions to ensure that you understand his perspective. And number 4, avoid giving unsolicited advice. Instead of jumping in with solutions, focus on helping him explore his options and discover his solutions. Number 3, encourage mindfulness practices. Practice mindfulness together, for example, meditation, deep breathing, or yoga as a couple. This can help both of you cultivate present moment awareness and reduce stress. Next, create a calming space. Designate a quiet area in your home where your husband can retreat to relax and practice mindfulness. And number 3, encourage breaks. Suggest that he take short breaks throughout the day to practice mindfulness and recharge. Number 4, support value-driven actions. Explore values. How is this done? Help your husband identify what is truly important to him in life. This could be relationships, health, career, friendships, personal growth, or other areas. Next, set goals. Encourage him to set goals that align with his values and take small steps toward achieving them. And 3, celebrate progress. Acknowledge and celebrate his efforts no matter how small they seem. I always use the 1% rule, the 1% effort. So if we're talking about progress, how have you improved in your chosen value-driven target by 1%? That's much easier than trying to fix or change something entirely. And number 5, seek professional help. Encourage therapy. If your husband is struggling, suggest that he seek professional help from a therapist specializing in psychological flexibility or acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT. Couples therapy. Consider couples therapy to learn how to support each other in practicing psychological flexibility and strengthen your relationship. And remember, be patient if you can. Developing psychological flexibility takes time and effort. Be patient with your husband and yourself throughout the process. Lead by example. Practice psychological flexibility in your own life. This can inspire and motivate your husband. Show compassion. Offer your husband love, understanding, kindness, and support as he navigates his journey towards greater psychological flexibility. By incorporating these tips into your daily lives, you can create a nurturing environment where your husband feels empowered to embrace psychological flexibility and thrive. Did that answer your question?
Thank you, Dr. Edery. That was extremely insightful. Our next question from a serviceman's wife is as follows. What are the key signs that PTSD is affecting our relationship, and how can I help to address these?
Okay, that's a really important question. Post-traumatic stress injury. So I notice I put in an injury versus a disorder, right? It's popular as PTSD. Most definitely can impact relationships. So the first thing is recognizing and addressing the signs with empathy and understanding, and that is so important for maintaining a healthy and supportive connection. Let's talk about some key indicators that PTSD might be affecting your relationship. So from the Mayo Clinic, and I highly recommend, if anybody's interested, you can Google search PTSD signs and symptoms Mayo Clinic. They have a rich repertoire of information, as does va.gov. Okay, so the website for that is www.ptsd.gov. ptsd.va.gov. So, number one, let's talk about emotional and behavioral signs. Very common and popular, in other words, a very common trend would be emotional distance and detachment. Your husband may seem emotionally unavailable, withdrawn, or less interested in spending time together. Next, irritability and anger. He might have a shorter temper, become easily frustrated, or have angry outbursts. Difficulty with intimacy. PTSD can affect physical and emotional intimacy, leading to challenges with affection, sex, or vulnerability. Okay, and a good website that you may want to check out is National Center for PTSD. So far, we have the mayoclinic.org, National Center for PTSD, and ptsd.va.gov. Next would be hypervigilance and anxiety. He may be constantly on edge, easily startled, or have difficulty relaxing. Avoidance and withdrawal. He might avoid certain places, activities, or conversations that trigger memories of the traumatic event. Flashbacks and nightmares. These can be distressing for both your husband and you, leading to emotional turmoil and sleep disturbances. Self-destructive behaviors. He might turn to alcohol, drugs, or other harmful coping and what I refer to as avoidance mechanisms to manage the emotional pain. That's huge. Avoidance is huge with PTSD. Next is communication and connection signs. 1, difficulty expressing emotions. He may struggle to share his feelings, leading to misunderstandings and resentment. Communication breakdowns. The trauma might affect his ability to communicate effectively, leading to arguments or emotional distance. Loss of trust. The trauma might have shaken his trust in others, making it a real struggle for him to be vulnerable and open in the relationship. And that's very easy to take personally. Very easy to take personally. And the last one is feeling unsupported. He may feel like you don't really understand his struggles or that you're not there for him. And that might be painful if that is projected onto you. And I see some nodding heads here, so I know that that's definitely common. So how could you address the signs? So we'll talk about 7 things you can do right now or within the next 24 hours. 1, educate yourself. Learn about PTSD and its impact on relationships. So fortify yourself with the knowledge and understanding of what your husband might be going through and respond with empathy. I always say this to my clients, to my spouses, and to my active duty. You don't have to like it. You don't have to agree with the behavior. You could be frustrated, angry. If you respond with empathy, you're helping your own nervous system dial down the stress, right? And we know our nervous systems interact with each other. So if you're dialing down your stress even 1%, that can help your husband dial down his for a moment. Next is open communication. Create a safe space for your husband to share his feelings and experiences. Listen actively without judgment. And you're going to hear me talk about, whenever I talk about this subject or anything in my line of work, open communication. You're going to hear that, and you're going to hear empathy. Those are, we can't fix the trials and tribulations of PTSD, but we can do our part to at least create a safe space for open communication and empathic, non-judgment listening. Okay. Number 3, validate his feelings. You'll hear me talk about that a lot too. Your emotions are valid and they're understandable. The behavior is not going to always be acceptable, and that's where boundaries come in. Okay. But emotions are valid, and the empathy is quite powerful. At the same time, you set the necessary boundaries and you take care of yourself. Encourage professional help. Suggest that he seek therapy from a mental health professional specializing in PTSD. Couples therapy can also be beneficial. And you can also remind him that we don't have the stigma like we used to have about going to therapy, whether you're a male or in the military system. The stigma has been reduced notably over the last 15 years. It's not perfect, but to suggest to him that he may need that extra support from a therapist, it might not be such a shocker to him, right? Practice patience and understanding. Remember that recovery from PTSD does take time. Be patient with your husband and yourself as you navigate this journey together. And I say, take good care of yourself, because supporting someone with PTSD often is emotionally draining. You may feel like you are bleeding energy, right? So make sure you have a support system and you take time for self-care that is right for you, right? So if you don't like jogging and that's not your self-care, then that's not on your list of self-care. If you like artwork or swimming or yoga, that's you tune in to what you need. And breath work is so important. Breath work is very powerful with this, okay? And lastly, set boundaries. So you will hear me talk about establishing healthy boundaries to protect your own well-being, at the same time being supportive. If you yourself feel overwhelmed or unsure how to navigate these challenges, consider seeking professional help for yourself. A therapist can provide guidance and support as you learn to cope with the impact of PTSD on your relationship. And remember, dear spouses, your love and support can significantly impact your husband's healing journey. By recognizing the signs and taking proactive steps, you can strengthen your bond and create a more loving, safe, and supportive relationship.
Thank you, Dr. Edery, as always, for sharing your invaluable insights. We'll look forward to your next episode.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
The Relationship Workout for Men podcast is based on the book, Relationship Workout for Men, The Men's Manual, available on Amazon. Also, if you care about being intentional in choosing and being a better partner, consider subscribing to relationshipworkout.com. As a podcast listener, use discount code PODCAST to receive a free 30-day trial.